You know, we all do it. A few times a day, probably without even thinking about it. But have you ever stopped and wondered about the incredible, hidden journey your food takes after that very first bite? Well, today, we're going to do just that. We're taking a trip inside the most sophisticated food processor on the entire planet, your own body. So I want you to imagine your digestive system as this amazing 7 to 8 meter long conveyor belt. Seriously, as you can see right here, food goes in one end and then it travels through all these different highly specialized workshops, getting systematically broken down into the fuel your body needs to, live and thrive. So, what's the whole point of this system? What's the mission? It's all about digestion. The goal is to take these big, complex food molecules, think the proteins in a steak or the starches in your pasta, and just deconstruct them, piece by piece, into tiny, simple building blocks that your cells can actually absorb and use for energy. Now, you probably think the real action starts way down in the stomach, right? But nope. The disassembly line kicks into high gear the second food enters your mouth. This is the very first and honestly one of the most important stops on the whole journey.
Okay, first meet the crushing crew, your teeth. An adult has 32 of them, and each one is a specialist at tearing, cutting, and grinding. They get the ball rolling with what's called mechanical breakdown, basically just smashing food into smaller, easier to manage bits. And get this, tooth enamel is literally the hardest substance in your entire body.
While your teeth are busy with the heavy lifting, a chemical attack is already underway. We have three main pairs of salivary glands, and get this, together they pump out an incredible 1.5 to 2 liters of saliva every single day. And trust me, this is not just water, it's a super sophisticated chemical cocktail. And this actually leads to a cool little experiment you can try yourself. You ever notice that if you take a piece of plain bread and just chew on it for a really, really long time, it starts to taste sweet? Yeah, that's not your imagination. That is some seriously cool science happening right there in your mouth. So what's the secret? Well, it's all in the ingredients. First, your saliva has an enzyme called amylase, and it immediately gets to work breaking down starches into simple sugars. That's the sweetness you taste. Then you've got mucin, which is basically a lubricant that turns everything into a neat, swallowable package called a bolus. And as a bonus, it's also got lysozyme, which is an antibacterial agent, giving you a first line of defense against nasty germs. Right, so once you swallow, that little ball of food doesn't just, fall down into your stomach. It's actually pushed down the esophagus by these coordinated waves of muscle contractions called peristalsis. And this process is so effective, it works even if you're eating upside down or in the zero gravity of space. So now we've arrived at the stomach, this churning, super acidic tank that's designed to just obliterate bacteria and turn your food into liquid. But this brings up a really fascinating puzzle. If the stomach is full of this powerful acid and enzymes that digest protein, how in the world does it keep from digesting itself? Well, the answer is a total engineering marvel, and it's hidden in the microscopic folds of the stomach wall. See, the lining is dotted with millions of these tiny little pits called gastric glands, and inside these glands is an amazing team of specialized cells, each one with a totally vital job. Let's meet the team. First up, you have the mucus cells. They produce this thick, slimy mucus that acts like a shield against the acid. Then, you've got the parietal cells. These are the acid factories, pumping out powerful hydrochloric acid. And finally, the chief cells. They produce something called pepsinogen. Now, here is the brilliant part. Pepsinogen is an inactive enzyme. It's like a locked safe. It only unlocks and transforms into its active protein-destroying form, pepsin, when it hits the acid. It's a perfect safety switch to make sure the stomach doesn't eat itself from the inside. But here's the thing, this delicate balance can get thrown off. When you're under chronic stress, your fight-or-flight response kicks in and pulls blood away from your digestive system. This means the stomach can't repair its protective lining as well, and that can lead to inflammation or gastritis. It's a direct physical link between what's going on in your head and your gut. After a few hours in the stomach, what's left is a semi-liquid paste called chyme. As this chyme starts to enter the small intestine, a couple of crucial helper organs get called in to join the party, the pancreas and the liver. So let's meet our helpers. On one side, we have the pancreas. Think of it as the body's master enzyme factory. It whips up this potent cocktail of enzymes that can digest pretty much everything. And on the other side, we have the liver, a total powerhouse that, for our digestion story, produces a critical substance called bile. And if you look here, you'll see their location is no accident. They are perfectly positioned to send their digestive juices through these little ducts right into the duodenum, that's the very first part of the small intestine, exactly where that acidic chyme is arising from the stomach. It's perfect timing.
So what does bile actually do? Well, it performs a process called emulsification. See, big blobs of fat are really hard for enzymes to attack. Bile works just like dish soap on a greasy pan. It shatters those big fat globules into millions of tiny little droplets. This massively increases the surface area, giving the fat-digesting enzymes way more to work with.
Okay, so with everything now broken down into its smallest parts, amino acids, simple sugars, fatty acids, we are now entering the longest and, you could argue, the most important part of the entire trip, the intestines. This is absorption central. This is where all those valuable nutrients finally get to enter the body. To make sure it absorbs as much as possible, the small intestine needs a massive surface area. Just how massive are we talking? About 250 square meters. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the size of a professional tennis court, all folded up neatly inside your abdomen. Just wild. So how on earth does it achieve that? It's a masterpiece of biological engineering. As you can see here, the intestinal wall is covered in millions of these little finger-like projections called villi. But it doesn't even stop there. Each individual cell on those villi is covered in even smaller projections called microvilli. It's like folds on top of folds on top of folds, all designed for one thing: maximum absorption. Whatever's left over after that moves into the large intestine. Its main jobs are to absorb the last little bit of water, act as a home for trillions of beneficial gut bacteria, your microbiome, and then finally to form and store waste before it, leaves the building. But here's something that might blow your mind. This whole complicated process isn't just a simple chemical reaction. It is managed by an incredibly complex and sophisticated control network. In fact, a lot of scientists now call the gut our second brain. There are multiple layers of control working here. Your parasympathetic system gives the rest and digest signal, which ramps everything up. The sympathetic system does the opposite. That's the fight or flight signal that shuts things down. But here's the crazy part. The gut also has its own nervous system, the metasympathetic system. It's a local network that manages reflexes like peristalsis all by itself without ever having to check in with your actual brain. It's like it has its own co-pilot running the show down there. And let's not forget about the other residents in there. Just let this fact sink in for a second. There are more bacterial cells living inside your gut than there are human cells in your entire body. It's this teeming ecosystem, your microbiome, and it plays a huge role in your immunity, your digestion, and even your mood. So we end on this thought. With a vast, independent nervous system running its own show, and an internal ecosystem of trillions of organisms that outnumber our own cells, is it more accurate to think of our gut not just as a part of us, but as its own complex world, living right inside us? It's a question that really changes how you see yourself, doesn't it? Thanks for coming along on this incredible journey.